Netanyahu is a war criminal, the architect of a horrific genocide against the Palestinian people. He is responsible for the killing of more than 73,000 people, for the maiming of tens of thousands of children as those who survive undergo amputation without anesthesia, for the targeting of neonatal hospitals and maternity care centers, denying newborns even the chance to live, for the countless people he starved as he blocked food and humanitarian aid from reaching them, for the gunning down of hundreds of aid workers and journalists. And just last month, the UN confirmed that Palestinian children continue to be deliberately targeted and killed by Israeli armed forces, more than 8 months after the so-called ceasefire. The list goes on and on, all as we, as Americans, pay for the bombs that do the killing. There is a reason the International Criminal Court issued a warrant for his arrest. As human beings, we have spent generations building a shared understanding that there are crimes so grave they offend all of humanity. Anyone with their eyes, with their heart, with their conscience should recognize the devastation he has wrought and understand that he belongs before a court of law. As I've said, I agree with the ICC that Benjamin Netanyahu should be arrested and tried for his crimes, as I do for anyone else charged by the ICC. My administration has reviewed every avenue available under applicable law to determine whether New York City could execute the International Criminal Court's arrest warrant if Benjamin Netanyahu came here. It is clear that we do not have the independent legal authority to enforce this warrant. The federal government, however, does, and I call on them to join the ICC and execute this warrant. And I want to be equally clear. Benjamin Netanyahu is not welcome in New York City, nor is any other war criminal at large. While we cannot end the genocide on our own, we can decide whether our silence will become another weapon, and we can examine every tool we have to defend the humanity and dignity of all people. That is my commitment to you.
It's about time an American politician called out Benjamin Netanyahu for the war criminal he is and the genocide in Gaza. Support for Israel appears to be weakening overall, even though Republicans remain largely supportive, with about 69 to 70% expressing a favorable view. By contrast, only 13% of independents and Democrats view Israel positively. The millions of dollars that they spend on their propaganda, not only in Israeli media, but in Western media, is no longer working. Al Jazeera breaks down the amount of money Israel is now spending on their propaganda.
In response, the Israeli government is injecting more money into its Hasbara budget. Hasbara is a Hebrew word, a shorthand term Israelis use for their government's propaganda efforts, fought through public figures, online influencers, and bots.
Fortunately, when the media is spreading one narrative, it's hard for the rest of the world to understand that.
For late 2024 and 2025, Israel's annual Hasbara budget was roughly $150 million. That was jacked up this year to almost $750 million. That investment does not seem to have paid off. More than 60% of Americans, again, according to the polling, now have an unfavorable view of Israel. A recent study by an Israeli security institute warned of diplomatic isolation and a creeping boycott. And much of the money the government throws at Hasbara goes to waste when Israeli soldiers, be they in Gaza or now Lebanon, proudly post videos, many of which show them committing war crimes.
The problem has appeared in the last 3 years when the Israeli government and its military arm started using social media in an attempt to change public opinion. But what they've been sharing and disseminating included evidence of Israeli war crimes. Israeli Hasbara cannot do what it wants to do because people see the actual realities of what the Israelis are conducting, and so it is actually shooting itself in the foot.
אנחנו מקיימים את מצוות מחה את זכר עמלק בשרפת בתים, כל הבתים שיש בעזה.
And frankly, I'm thrilled about it because it's more money that they're flushing down the toilet, because clearly their social media strategy is not working. No one buys it, so it's great.
The Israeli government is spending millions in the US alone to brainwash Americans into believing that the genocide in Gaza is not happening. The Esther Project is a massive Israeli social media propaganda campaign aimed at improving Israel's public image. Israel is paying 14 to 18 social media influencers based in the US to post pro-Israeli content 25 to 30 times per month, and they are paid approximately $7,000 per post. Although the names of the social media influencers are not known, several of the influencers have taken sponsored public relations trips to Israel. According to Columbia Journalism Review, invitations for these trips have been extended to Eaton Fishberger, Noah Kova, Xavier DeRosso, and Jeremy Awakens. In September 2025, Netanyahu met with pro-Israeli influencers Lizzie Savetsky, Ari Acker, Zach Sage Fox, Miriam Ezekiel, and Joyce Chab. Netanyahu said at the meeting, "We have to fight with the weapon that apply to the battlefield in which we engage, and the most important ones are on social media." The only influencer that has denied receiving payment is Savetsky. The Foreign Agents Registration Act requires individuals or organizations acting on behalf of foreign governments, political parties, companies, nonprofits, or individuals outside the U.S. to register with DOJ and publicly disclose their activities, financial receipts, and expenditures. Recent FARA disclosures reveal that Israeli government plans to spend $4.1 million for an extensive outreach operation targeting American Christians. Israel has contracted the firm Show Faith Works and are planning on rolling out branded trailer exhibits, virtual reality headsets, and interactive kiosks. The campaign will recruit pastors to author opinion editorials, distribute resource packages through mail, hire social media influencers, and produce television-style commercials. Materials submitted with the registration emphasize that Palestinians bear collective responsibility for Hamas leadership and operations, accusing them of sheltering terrorists and storing weapons in civilian infrastructure, possibly to give them cover for their ongoing genocide. There's also a geofencing campaign that targets Christian churches on Sundays and Christian colleges on weekdays throughout California, Nevada, and other Western states with advertisements on their mobile devices that are pro-Israel and critical towards Palestine. And other FARA filings show that the Israeli government paying former Trump campaign manager Brad Parscale $6 million through his firm Clock Tower X to target Gen Z across TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and podcast. The contract includes creating websites and content designed to influence AI models like ChatGPT to train them to respond to questions about Israel more favorably. The firm aims to generate at least 50 million monthly impressions and will use search engine optimization tools to evaluate content supportive of Israel positions on Google and Bing. There are journalists that are finally starting to report the truth of what is happening in Gaza. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar have threatened to sue the New York Times for defamation over the publication by Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter Nicholas Kristof's essay detailing horrific allegations that Palestinian women, men, and children have been raped and SA'd in Israel detention. More on this story from Al Jazeera.
Some key mainstream media outlets are now inching towards acknowledging the truth about Israel and its actions. Case in point, the New York Times. The Times has a long track record of defending or ignoring some clear-cut Israeli war crimes. We asked the paper about that and received no reply. But this past week, the Times published a piece by an op-ed writer, Nicholas Kristof, that documented 14 cases of sexual assault against Palestinians in the West Bank by Israeli soldiers and settlers. The examples included systematic cases of rape in prisons, sometimes through the use of dogs, and the sexual abuse of Palestinian children. Israel's foreign ministry then attacked the Times, calling the story one of the worst cases of blood libel to appear in the modern press. Then it announced the Israeli government would sue the paper over that op-ed. Whether it makes good on that threat or not remains to be seen. But between the government's reaction and the hostility that Israelis are directing at the Times on social media, the relationship between Israel and America's newspaper of record appears to be at an all-time low.
Blood libel is how Israeli officials have described Nicholas Kristof's reporting in the New York Times. But you don't have to look hard to find the claims in that report being openly discussed in the Israeli media. Among the horrific accounts in Kristof's piece, a Gazan journalist who said that he was sexually abused by a dog. Hard to fathom. But then you see interviews like this one with an Israeli soldier and his dog and what it did to alleged Hamas fighters inside the Sde Teiman military prison.
טיפל קצת בנוח'בות בשדה תימן, עשה הרבה.
אל תגיד דברים ש...
The same prison where video emerged of a Palestinian captive being led away and allegedly raped by Israeli guards. They denied the allegation, but the captive was later hospitalized with internal injuries. Despite the video evidence, the Israeli military acquitted the guards involved and approved them for duty. When the charges were dropped, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called them heroic fighters and said the blood libel had come to an end. During the trial, most of the guards concealed their identities except one, Meir Ben Shetri, who has been treated as some kind of celebrity on the Israeli airwaves.
לוחם כוח 100, מאיר בן שטרית, שהתמודד עם הנוח'בות בשדה תימן, ועכשיו מתמודד עם האשמות קשות, וכולנו רוצים לשמוע מה יש לו להגיד.
Despite the mounting evidence, the Israeli prison service still denies the sexual abuse of Palestinians, but there have been calls by Israeli journalists to legalize it.
קודם כל, הדבר היחיד שמבחינתי הוא בעיה פה, זה שזו לא איזושהי מדיניות מוסדרת של המדינה להתעלל בעצירים.
And one last point on Kristof's piece. He acknowledged that some would suspect that the accounts were fabricated to defame Israel. He called that far-fetched. Why? Because according to Kristof, he found the Palestinians interviewed in the piece, not the other way around. So it's either a case of a two-time Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist reporting for a historically pro-Israel news outlet engaging in an act of blood libel.
Under the so-called ceasefire, the Israeli government is still blocking humanitarian aid into Gaza, causing a further humanitarian crisis.
For nearly 2 decades, Israel has controlled who and what enters Gaza. Not just people, but food, water, fuel, and medicine. And since October 2023, it has cut back much of that access. More than 2 million people rely on 3 crossings: Erez, Rafah, and Karam Abu Salem. That's the main entry for food, fuel, and medicine, and it only opens irregularly. Under the October ceasefire, Israel agreed to allow up to 608 trucks into Gaza each day. But officials say restrictions are still in place, and only about a third of those promised deliveries have been allowed in. The result? A hunger crisis. Doctors Without Borders say Israel's restrictions have led to alarming levels of malnutrition. Virtually all of Gaza faces food insecurity. And Palestinians say, even when some aid does enter, accessing it is another challenge. With an 80% of unemployment rate, many cannot afford to buy flour, let alone fresh produce. Israel's restrictions haven't only affected food. Clean water has almost disappeared. The hospitals that remain are barely functioning. Equipment has been damaged, and many much-needed parts are restricted from entering. Aid groups say Israel has also restricted the entry of materials people need for makeshift shelters. Around 1 million people are now living in tents, many forced to move again and again. Israel says security concerns justify the controls on aid and other supplies. But humanitarian organizations, the UN, and Palestinians in Gaza tell a different story. And for many of them, survival still depends on whether the next aid truck makes it through.
An Israeli airstrike targets a vehicle, killing everyone inside. There's a war going on, but this isn't Iran. It's what a ceasefire looks like to Palestinians in Gaza.
We feel that we are in a state of war and that the war is still raging in the region. We witness bombardments and assassinations all the time. Even though we are in a ceasefire, we do not feel it.
Isra is among the estimated 1.7 million people forced from their homes in the Strip. With some plastic and a lot of prayer, she tries to keep the rain at bay. Her hopes that there's an end in sight to the misery is fraying, much like her tent. The UN says some Palestinians are only getting half of the calories needed to sustain life. Israel maintains a stranglehold on the border crossings. Many here say they feel forgotten by the world.
Before the Iran war, the same people who forgot about us then just keep on forgetting about us now. Food supplies have decreased and prices have gone up.
The landscape is apocalyptic. It bears the scars of war, but the human cost cannot be ignored.
There has been increased settler violence against Palestinians since the U.S.-Israeli war in Iran.
On Iran, Israeli settlers are annexing new areas in the occupied West Bank. Violence has escalated, including arson attacks on Palestinian homes and vehicles. In March 2026, the number of Palestinians reportedly killed by settlers reached its highest in a decade. This campaign of violence aims to evict Palestinians from their homes. Israeli settlements in the West Bank are illegal under international law. But in a single day in March 2026, the Israeli government approved over 30 outposts. Most regular units in the Israel Defense Forces are currently deployed in Gaza and Lebanon. That means security in the West Bank is now the responsibility of the Israeli police and the IDF's regional defense battalions. Many of those soldiers are settlers themselves. A recent UN report highlighted the worsening crisis.
Israeli security forces have continued to kill Palestinians with impunity.
On April 21st, a reservist in the IDF killed 2 Palestinians outside a school. Settlers aren't just becoming more violent, they are also systematically annexing more territory. After the Oslo Accords in 1993, the West Bank was divided into 3 areas. These are controlled by the Palestinian Authority. Others are under joint Palestinian civil and Israeli security control. The rest is fully administered by Israel. After the Hamas attack from Gaza in October 2023, settlers embarked on a campaign of intimidation against Palestinians in remote rural areas. Since the start of the war with Iran, there have been more organized, repeated attacks on larger communities. Settlers are growing more confident because of tacit or explicit support from Israel's government. The finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, is a settler and has called on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to take over the West Bank. 2 days later, President Donald Trump issued a rare rebuke.
I will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank.
But on the ground, a form of annexation is already underway. And with the world's attention on Iran, violence in the West Bank is likely to intensify.
A new report found that Israeli military and settlers are deliberately targeting children. Here is just one of those stories.
قريب كتير وعم تمشي.
Those were some of the last words of 6-year-old Hind Rajab on the phone to Palestinian aid workers. She was fleeing Gaza City with her aunt, uncle, and 3 cousins when Israeli forces shelled their vehicle. During this call, she was the only one left alive in the car and had been hiding among the bodies of her relatives for hours. Her pleas for someone to rescue her only ended when the phone line was cut amid the sound of more gunfire. Hind's body was retrieved 12 days later. The car was found riddled with bullets. A forensic investigation found a total of 335 were fired at close range. Israeli forces also killed 2 paramedics who were sent to rescue her that day. The unit responsible for killing Hind and her family has been named in a new UN report by the top investigative body on Palestine and Israel. But the independent commission goes further. It finds that Hind is not an exception. She's a pattern. One of more than 20,000 children in Gaza, it says, have been deliberately killed as part of Israel's genocide. The 88-page UN report examines the full scope of harm inflicted on children since the 7th of October 2023. From using children's bodies as target practice to torturing them to death in Israeli detention, the report also focuses on reproductive violence and psychological trauma. It builds upon a report from last September that found Israel had committed genocide and that Israeli officials, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, were inciting it. In response, Israel has called the commission a libelous sham.
Having seen how the rest of the world has allowed Israel to act with complete and utter impunity, what is revealed in this report, this United Nations report, that they know all of this. This has all been provided to them in graphic pictorial evidence over the last 2 years. So actually it's nothing new for them. They know all of this. So one would like to think that people would act on the basis of that, but they haven't done so far. So I will not hold my breath waiting for our governments to act on this.
Israel is targeting journalists in Gaza that are reporting on the atrocities being carried out by Israel in Gaza. Israel killed at least 84 media workers and journalists in 2025, far more than any other country in what was the deadliest year on record for the news media. Israel was overwhelmingly responsible for targeted killings, carrying out 38 of 47 deadly incidents. Representative Ro Khanna was the first congressman to visit Palestine, and while he was there, Israeli settlers and the Israeli military detained him and his staff for approximately 75 minutes. While there are people that say he went to Palestine as a publicity stunt because he wants to run for president, but all I can say, it is about time that an American official saw with their own eyes what the American taxpayers are paying for.
For 3 days, I've been talking to Palestinians in their homes and villages about the daily injustices they face under occupation.
And also the blood is here. Do you see the blood? See that? Oh my gosh.
As a congressman, I never expected to be the target of settler violence. But when we visited a school in Zenuda village that settlers had burned down, we were detained by settlers wielding M4 guns who blocked our van from leaving the site. They called additional settlers for support and held us captive for 75 minutes, recording videos, laughing at us, and mocking me and my staff. I will never forget their faces. What angered me most is that the IDF soldiers who came to the scene supported the violent settlers over American citizens. Here's the question. If the settlers and IDF could do this to an American congressman, imagine what life is like for an ordinary Palestinian under Israel's occupation. I've never felt more powerless in my whole life. For decades, American politicians have made the trek to Tel Aviv while not taking the time to cross over and hear from Palestinians about the actual facts on the ground.
A BBC journalist asked an Israeli settler what a Palestinian life is worth versus a Jewish life, and this was his answer.
I think
Now, after they kill one Israeli people, we need to kill all the people in Tel and Sarah, even Jit and Farata. Why? Because we don't want it to happen again.
It sounds like you're saying one Jewish life is worth hundreds or thousands of Palestinian lives.
Not million. One Jewish life, it's 10 million, okay?
That just sounds racist.
Yes, I know. I know, but this is the truth. Because God chose us. Because of this, you are jealous.
His comments are not an outlier. National Security Advisor Ben Gvir has made very similar comments. He posted a video of himself mocking Palestinians and torturing the flotilla activists that were trying to get aid into Gaza. And he spearheaded a plan to place crocodiles in moats encircling prisons where Palestinians are being held. Israeli courts blocked the plan, not out of concern for the Palestinians, but out of concern for the reptiles. Under this so-called ceasefire, Israel was illegally occupying 53% of the West Bank, and now they are occupying 70%. What Israel has done to Gaza, they want to do in southern Lebanon. Israel has largely demolished several villages along the Israeli and Lebanon border, and Israel is now illegally occupying 608 square miles. More than 1 million Lebanese have been forcibly displaced, and Israeli attacks have killed at least 886 people, including 76 women, 111 children, and 38 health workers between March 2nd and March 16th to 2026. Israel is also illegally occupying parts of Syria, and they have no intention on leaving any of the illegally occupied land because, according to the Greater Israel Project, they believe they are entitled to this land. The American government on both sides of the aisles are complicit in the genocide in Gaza. They are giving Israel the bombs and weapons to kill Palestinians. They have killed 13 Palestinian Americans in Gaza, and now they're killing Lebanese. Congress has given them an estimated $22 billion in the last 2 years with no limitations, so they can continue to act with impunity. AIPAC spends tens of millions of dollars in congressional campaigns to get pro-Israeli candidates elected in both the Democrat and Republican parties. They have spent a whopping $67 billion in the primaries in mostly Democratic races to defeat the progressive or DSA candidates because they are speaking out against the genocide in Gaza and are vowing to cut off the funding for Israel. AIPAC wants pro-Israeli candidates to be elected because they don't want to lose their cash cow. AIPAC is so toxic that they are increasingly supporting candidates through indirect or less publicly visible channels. This includes using different names and tactics with their funding. One of their affiliated super PACs is United Democracy Project. In addition, reporting has identified other political groups as being shell PACs to conceal where the money is coming from, such as Elect Chicago Women and Affordable Chicago Now. They have supported candidates aligned with AIPAC's priorities, sometimes without prominently disclosing those connections. Additionally, advertisements funded by these groups focus on domestic issues and do not prominently mention Israel. The Israeli government, people on the right and some people on the left smear anyone that speaks out against the Israeli government as anti-Semitic to prevent them from speaking out. Just because someone speaks out about the atrocities being carried out in Gaza and now in Lebanon by the Israeli government, Israeli settlers and IDF soldiers, that is well documented by the UN and very reputable organizations and is playing out in front of our eyes, does not mean that you are anti-Semitic. It means that you are against genocide and you are not turning a blind eye to what is happening or outright denying that it's even happening, like some congressmen on the left and the right. They won't even say that there is a genocide. I will continue to speak out about Gaza and Lebanon because these stories need to be told. If you want to find out which congressional candidates are taking AIPAC money, you can visit trackapac.com.